I love to start these conversations and interviews by asking my guests if you could just share a bit about your story, like who you are, how you came to where you are, and what you're up to.
Yes. So I'm Amber Ray, obviously, as y'all know by now.
Yeah.
And today I'm an author, a writer, a speaker, and this is not the path I expected for myself at all. I started my career working in tech, in branding and marketing with startups, and was on this very, I guess, more conventional and traditional path. And like many of us, had this still quiet voice within me saying, this is not for you. There's more, like, go try that, go explore this. And I just kept listening and hearing this voice, which at first I was like, go away, because, you know, like, maybe I don't want to work in tech forever, but this is comfortable and this is great. And I'm climbing the ladder, and can't I just like be happy here? And the voice was like, no, you can't be happy here. And so it eventually got louder and louder and led me to, about a decade ago now, quit my job in tech, sell everything I own, and move from San Francisco to New York in a 48-hour period.
Whoa.
I know. I decided it was a little dramatic. But,
and I thought I was impulsive. That's impressive.
You know, and it's, I had been thinking about it for about 9 months, but I think, you know, there's some people who they're going to make tiny, small changes, and that's great. For me, I felt like I was in a moment in time where I just needed to like burn everything down and start anew. And I was very much in the toxic, like, work culture. I was like popping Adderall to get more done, like work, hustle, like harder. And I just had lost touch with myself. And so, you know, my book is called Choose Wonder Over Worrying. And the idea really is that we're born with so much curiosity and wonder. And that's so much of who we are. And then we are socialized and conditioned to worry. And so I felt like San Francisco and me in the tech world was that like peak of worry, peak of me being who I thought everyone wanted me to be. And, you know, really following the path of should, as my friend Aluna would say. And so I ended up in that move, really choosing wonder again and beginning to wonder, you know, who am I? Why am I here? What are my gifts? What are the things for me to pursue? And actually began writing and blogging about that sort of on the side, thinking it wouldn't be anything, only for that blog and that writing to build an entire career path that I couldn't have expected. So it started with like building an audience, and then that audience coming to me and being like, wow, Amber, I see you making all these changes. Can you help me? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Never thought of that. So I started doing these self-discovery retreats around the world. And then that led to more writing and guest columns, and then eventually writing a book, and then decided to pursue like this, like on a whim curiosity of art when I was in Lower Manhattan, and I walked into this art gallery and something inside of me said, it's time to make some art. And of course there was quickly a worry voice that was like, you didn't go to art school. You can't make art. But again, following that thread of curiosity led me to discover that there was an artist inside of me dying to come out. And so it was really about following these inner pulls and these almost like these directives that sometimes I didn't know where they were coming from, and they seemed crazy and illogical, but I felt like, why not?
Yeah, I'm all for that. I'm currently in Vancouver as we speak because I've been following the voice for the last 2 years. There's been these little cues, these little breadcrumbs that can't remember who I interviewed, and she referred to it as these breadcrumbs in life that you can follow. And I'm like, I'm going to listen to that. And every time I kind of do surrender to the knowing voice, it always works out. So yes. I like that's how you lead. Because I know that there's a lot of people that want to make changes, right? And I'm curious as to how, like, did you have money saved up? Did you have a plan? Because it's not always smart for everyone just to like quit their job and leave. But I know that they're having these callings where something doesn't feel right. What was your experience, and what would be your advice to help people transition to that next stage to get out of what they're doing?
Yep. So I did not have any savings, and I ended up selling all of my belongings in my car, which gave me about, I think, like $15K. So I was like, great. I have like 3 months in New York, you know, maybe
so sad. Yeah.
Maybe 6 if I'm like really,
super careful. Don't eat.
Super careful.
Yeah.
And so I figured for me, my mom was an entrepreneur, and she was a powerhouse, and she was a badass. And she was always like, you got to take the risks. And so I think because I had that priming from her, it felt almost safer for me, or it felt less risky for me to take the leap and give it a try than to stay where I was and keep playing small. So it's almost like the pain of my situation had been like, had gotten just, it was too much. And so I was like, you know, anything from here, I feel like is going to open doors of possibility. And so because I had the blog and had built an audience and was involved in tech and had a lot of relationships, that absolutely helped, because what happened is when I got to the airport, I wrote a piece. Well, when I got to the airport, that's when I called my mom and told her what I was doing. I hadn't told her because I didn't want anyone to stop me or say like, oh, do you want to think through this more? I was like, no, I've thought it through. So that's at that point, she was like, go baby, I trust you. Oh boy, like keep me posted. But then I sat down and I wrote a piece about basically what I was doing and why I was doing it and where the move is coming from. And when I landed in New York, the piece had gone viral.
Wow.
And so that, I mean, opened the doors. There was like a production company that wanted to do a reality television show. There were these different companies that wanted to hire me, which interesting. I was like, did you read the post? Because I don't want to be hired right now. And so that, I mean, that like, because I sort of had that foundation set of relationships, an online audience, I think it made the transition easier for me. Yes, I had a little bit of cash saved, but it was more about the opportunities that the relationships in the audience opened.
Gotcha. Brilliant.
And so I began experimenting.
So you'd done a little bit of the groundwork before you got to made this decision. Yeah, you'd had.
Yes. So I'd had those pieces in place. And so, I mean, my advice for everyone else always is, what is your level of risk tolerance? Because putting someone in that exact same position as me, who was not comfortable with making leaps like that, maybe did not grow up with entrepreneurial models, you know, things like that, they might like have so many panic attacks in the process of making that move that it would actually just not be productive for them. And so it's like, what is your level of risk tolerance? What is the foundation that you have set? So is it, you know, who do you know? That does help. Who do you know? Who do you know where you want to go? What are those relationships? And then of course, what is your runway? So how much cash do you have to last, you know?
It's very smart, because I moved to LA 6 years ago, and I moved with $5,000 to LA. It was kind of stupid. And I figured it out, but I'd gone a month before, and I'd made a lot of connections, because to me, support and connections are really important. And so I met people that kind of became, who are now like my family. And without them, I would have found it a lot more difficult. I'm kind of pretty wild, because I'm like you, I can go worst case scenario, I'll come home, I'll never go hungry, is something that I always say. Like, I've always got the support of my mum if needed, my parents. But yeah, I think it's important that, a great point, like know what you're comfortable with, like what's your level of risk that you're okay with, because I think not many people think about that, and then set yourself up accordingly. So
yeah.
Brilliant.
And like, because I've, you know, I think of so many people that I've worked with. Like, I think of one woman who is now a successful artist, but she still has her day job.
Wow.
And she's like doing murals with big brands and selling her art. And she discovered, you know, there was this artist in her that also wanted to come out, but she wasn't willing to leave what was secure and stable yet. And I'm like, we're making more money now from the art than from the day job? Are we going to like shift soon, you know? But like, she's on her own timeline, and that's great. And that works for her. And she actually loves her day job, and it like it fills her up, and it gives her space to explore her art without any pressure.
That's brilliant.
And so it's like, we all have different models. We can pursue things alongside what we're already doing. So I think there's unique scenarios for each of us that can be created.
Beautiful. So I'm fascinated by this whole topic of worry. And that's kind of like your book is about this, and choosing wonder over worry, because I think worry for a lot of people is very real. And you clearly got over your worry. What was it that made you kind of decide to hone in on this? And what is the kind of the foundation of what you teach? Do you have workshops about this? Is that what you kind of talk a lot with your community?
Yeah. Lots of workshops, lots of talks, in-person intimate events. I do wonder circles where people just come and get together and are real about their worries, their fears, and their doubts. And so what was interesting is that for me, the worry and the fear and the doubt came not like in taking the leap. Like I was like, okay, let's go. But it was when I wanted to pursue the things that were really meaningful to me. So it was, I want to write a book. And then of course it was, but you're not good enough to write a book. You know, who are you to do that? You know, you're not ready yet. And there was this constant voice that I felt like was sort of preventing me from taking action.
Mm.
And, or again, with art, like, you didn't go to art school. Who are you to make art? And so as much as I was like pursuing wonder and following these clues, it was like, there was this another character. And I was like, who is this character? Like, you know, I'm like going for it, but like, who's this one who's telling me that I suck, I'm not good enough, and I'm not capable of doing this? And I decided that that was like the character of worry. So have you seen the movie Inside Out?
I love that film. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
It's a really amazing DreamWorks Pixar.
Yeah.
Animation.
So good. And so it was helpful for me to even think about these different worries, fears, or doubts as these characters. And so, because I found that I come from brand world, and I used to help like brands figure out who their ideal archetypes are, who would buy their products. And I was like, well, what if that could actually translate to our own inner world? And so I started like applying that to my own inner world. Oh, okay, so I've got like anxious Annie, and I've got Grace the perfectionist, and I've got, you know, the imposter syndrome named Doc, who's a Harvard neuroscientist.
I love it.
And so I just started like developing these different techniques and programs so that I could create distance between myself and all these voices inside my head.
That's it. It's the disidentifying, because when we identify, my was like, you're never going to make it. You're a terrible actress. Like it was, my inner voice was just vile. And then as soon as when I realized that what I'm saying is not truth, I don't have to listen to that. I can step away I can change it to something that's more empowering. That's when the change came. But I think just so many people don't realize they believe that voice to be true, and then they can't. They're crippled by it.
Totally.
So you have like three sort of, what are your kind of 3 steps for choosing wonder over worry?
So, well, I'll talk about first the 3 C's, I call them, which are for facing any discomfort, any uncomfortable emotion. The 3 C's I think of as like Wonder Sidekicks.
Okay.
And so that's courage, curiosity, and compassion. And so let's say that, you know, Grace, my perfectionist, is acting out and telling me that I could never write this book. And if I say that, people are going to judge me, and you can't be vulnerable because you're vulnerable, you're weak. You know, she has all these opinions. And so courage is what encourages us to go there when we don't want to go there. Courage says, this is scary. I am afraid of putting my voice out there. I am afraid that people might judge me for sharing that part of my story, but I'm going to do it anyway. And, you know, courage, what I like to remember about courage is that courage requires fear. If we're not afraid, if we're not uncomfortable, like, we don't need to call on courage.
Right.
And so it's, you know, I think the first step is to identify where there's that resistance, because actually that fear can be a compass for where to take action. And so that's where we can call on courage. And then curiosity is the part of us that says, I wonder why I feel that way. I wonder why every time I'm about to share my story, I choke up and I feel tension in my throat and I don't speak up. Where's that coming from? You know, was there a moment, like for me, I was able to trace it back to this like boy in 5th grade who told me I was speaking up and sharing my story in class and like very excited and bubbly. And the boy was like, Amber, no one cares about your story. Like, this isn't the Amber show. And so I noticed that anytime I would go to share, I'd be like, oh, maybe I'm making this too much about me. Oh, I should quiet down. And so curiosity helps us get to the root of the story that we're telling ourselves, which often isn't true, which we often inherit from society or someone else.
Right.
And when we can unlock that root, that's when we can unlock so much freedom. So that's curiosity. And then the third is compassion, which is remembering that we're human. We're not perfect beings. We're flawed, and our flaws make us beautiful, and we're all doing the best that we can. And so having compassion for wherever we are without thinking we need to be further along or we need to have it figured out, and just appreciating where we are. So I think with those combined things, it allows us to take leaps. It allows us to understand the root of the stories we tell ourselves. It allows us to like remember we're human.
Brilliant. It's so simple but effective in just how we kind of look at these things. I'm curious, is there anything that you ever get worried about these days?
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing about worry is, you know, people often come to me and they say, how do I get rid of my worry? How do I like fix it? How do I make it go away? And I'm like, no, the point isn't to make it to go away. It's to shift how you relate to it so that it's not wrong or bad. Because like worry, there's useful worry and there's toxic worry.
Yeah.
Like worry is what is part of our brain. Worry and fear are part of this like threat mechanism system in our brain. So anytime we're going to do something dangerous, it's like alert, be safe, like alert, get away from the edge of the mountain. Alert, like that guy on Tinder who wants you to come over. It's not a good idea. Or whatever it is, you know, like fear and worry are useful. That's how we've survived this long. But the problem is that our brain hasn't evolved with modern society. And so anytime we're about to do something novel, meaningful, or interesting, that's where that worry comes up. So I say all that every time we're up leveling, there's going to be a new set of worries. It's like I'm getting married in May. And, you know, with that is like, there's different worries about like, will the wedding go okay? Will there be drama? Like, I'm sure he's my person, right? You know? So it's like, whatever we're doing. Or I met with my literary agents today and they're like, all right, book 2. And I'm like, oh, you know, like, am I ready to do book 2? Like, are people gonna want it? Am I gonna create what they need? And so I think there's a different set of worries that come with everything that we do.
But you're just better processing them now and dealing with them. And
exactly.
Yeah. I like that you say that, because I speak often about depression, and I never think that it's something that you heal. I think that for me, it comes and goes in waves. And what I get better at is identifying it when it's coming on and being able to ride that wave a lot better because of the things that I've learned from previous experiences. I don't think it ever just like vanishes in a puff. So yeah, I think you're giving people these tools for worry. I think that, because in this modern age with the amount of stimulation from everything, it's like completely overwhelming. And I think for you, like being in that tech environment of it, be like, you must be constantly driving and striving. I feel like I should be doing these things all the time. And I actually struggle to take time off to relax. What are your thoughts on this kind of idea of kind of how we should be living our lives, and how you're seeing that play out in people that you work with, or how do you manage that I should be versus like being and dealing with the pressures?
Well, and I think that's the key word there is should, where it's like, why should you? Where did you get that idea and belief system? I remember that article that recently went live. It wasn't Bustle. Where was it? Anyway, this woman talked about burnout and how like just how prevalent burnout is today because we think we should be working all the time. It's like, where did we get that idea, and what could we do instead? And I like to think that like every concept can be, again, toxic and useful. So there's like healthy hustle and there's toxic hustle.
Yes.
And toxic hustle is you got to be working all the time. You can't stop, because if you don't stop, you're not gonna, you know, whatever, maybe it's like achieve this or get there, or your audience is gonna all of a sudden no longer be interested. Whereas like healthy hustle knows like, I need rest and play in order to like reinvigorate myself. And so, I mean, even because now I work for myself, I create my own schedule. And it took me so long to separate from the 9 to 5, thinking I need to be like up at 7, working at 9, the day ends at 5, when I was like, that's actually not the rhythm of my body. Like, let me peel off those layers of conditioning and actually understand like what inspires me, when do I feel in flow, and how can I design around flow rather than like just what I was indoctrinated into.
Right. And so what's your schedule like now? How do you manage that?
I wake up around 9. And then I focus on ritual. So it's journaling. I pull a tarot card. I do a little bit of reading, and it's all around like going inward before taking in all the inputs. And then from there, I'll get clear on what my top 3 are for the day. And then, you know, every day is a little different for me. But then maybe I'm making art, or I'm preparing for a talk, or I'm writing a book, or shooting a documentary. You know, there's a variety of things to prepare for. And then I let that be flow. And then I have a swing in my living room so that I can like take swing breaks.
That's awesome.
Or I like actively go on walks, because like, especially if I'm stuck, I realize I need to exit the environment and have a change of scenery. And in that change of scenery, things end up figuring themselves out.
That's very cool because I find that I work a lot from home in my apartment in LA, and that's not an environment that's conducive for creativity for me. So I'm like sort of actively finding other places. It seems like you've got your loft in Brooklyn set up as a very cool play space, so that you've got all of that in there. Do you find, so you say that you take yourself out when you're stuck, but do you find like motivation and sitting down to do the work, is that quite easy for you? Do you feel like you come from an inspired action place, or sometimes you have to like try to do that?
Yeah, I feel like, that's a good question. For whatever reason, I feel pretty self-motivated.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not motivated, I'll get curious about why.
Mm-hmm.
And like, because I think procrastination can sometimes be wisdom. I mean,
Mm.
there's procrastination that is, I am resisting this, like I'm resisting sitting down and doing my writing today because something actually really like powerful is going to come through and I'm afraid of it. That
Mm-hmm.
happens. But then there's like, why am I procrastinating on this? Because there's wisdom in maybe I'm following a path that's actually not aligned for me. And so if
Mm-hmm.
I noticed recently there was a potential project and collaboration. Every time I went to work on it, it was just like this like feeling in my body of just like, ugh.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like, oh, it wasn't fear of expression. It was just like, ugh, this just like doesn't feel aligned.
Right. Did you do it?
No. I
Cool.
then reached back out and was basically like, hey, you know what? This for these, I love what you're doing. This doesn't feel like the right time. And for these reasons, it's just not feeling aligned. So I'd like to pause and, reconsider later.
Yeah,
It
that's
wasn't
brilliant.
a no forever. It was like, this just isn't right now.
Yeah, I think that's so great to listen to that and then just act accordingly. The thing that I sometimes struggle with is I'm like, is it because I don't want to do it, or that like, I just can't be bothered to do it, or is it because it doesn't really feel right? But I think I can tell what
Yeah,
it is. And it's good to be sort of reflecting on these. A lot of the things that I find that I'm doing, and they're not actually, it's not the amount of work and effort that goes into it is not worth the output that I get back. And just going through that too and making note of like, is this really what I should be doing? I think we can all find ways of doing that in life.
totally. And I was talking to my friend Rob recently, and he's like, well, what do you want out of this? And I was like, oh, I hadn't considered what I wanted. I was just considering everything I could give. And he's like,
Mm.
well, let's consider how it's a win-win. And so like, it was such a good point to be like, what do I hope to learn and gain and grow here?
Yeah,
Not
great.
just how I can show up for them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're not like the most like of the majority of the planet, but I love that was your revelation because it is important too. Tell us. Thank you, by the way, for offering to give away a copy of Worry. Choose Wonder over Worry. Can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah. So Choose Wonder Over Worry is, I like to think of it as a guide to your inner world. And
Mm.
you're going to meet, like I talked about wonder having these sidekicks. There's also all these like siblings or flavors of worry. So you'll meet fear and meet imposter syndrome and meet anxiety and meet perfectionism and just understand how to move through them and how to not have them, stifle your life.
Mm.
And I bring to life worry and wonder as these two characters. Worry, the voice of your inner critic, really, and wonder is the voice of your curious inner guide.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows you through this journey what's possible when wonder leads the way.
Is it in the style of like a story, or is it like sort of personal development book, or is it like a hybrid? I'm curious.
It's like part memoir,
Uh-huh.
part, I like to think of it part memoir, part manifesto, part map.
Oh, I
And
like it.
so like I'm not here are 10 steps to get rid of worry type of
Mm-hmm.
writer. I'm like, I'm going to gut myself and show you my soul and show you all the things that I, had to look at to shift how I dealt with my feelings and shift
Mm.
being a positivity-aholic, and talk about the death of my father. He's sort of the beginning and the end and the impact of that on my life. But I do that in a way where I'm always bringing it back to the reader. So it's not like
Mm.
pure memoir, because it's like, okay, I'm going to show you some of me, and what is that?
How does that
What is
relate?
that?
How can that
How does
help?
that relate? And
Mm-hmm.
what does that bring up in you? And then there's lots of journal prompts and exercises. I call them wonderventions
Oh, that
throughout.
sounds fun. You should what, trademark that. It's a good term.
Thank you.
Keep hold of that. So what actually, if you don't mind going there, when did your father pass away, and how did that impact? Was that kind of what sparked this catalyst to get out of tech?
No, that came, well, okay, so to tie that all back, so my dad was this brilliant singer-songwriter, musician. He played like 7 instruments, and
Wow.
my mom said that he was the most brilliant person she'd ever met.
Mm-hmm.
And he always was getting in his own way because he
Mm-hmm.
was sort of not facing his demons, not facing his shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And so he decided to leave when I was about 2.5 to pursue his dream of rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately got involved in very much the sex, drugs, and rock and roll part of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that led him to get behind the wheel under the influence.
Mm.
And it was after a bachelor party. His best friend was getting married the next day. He fell
Mm.
asleep at the wheel, went under a truck,
Oh
and
God.
his best friend got decapitated.
Oh God.
And my dad wasn't wearing a seatbelt, so he was thrown to the back seat and never regained full consciousness. So he was in a coma for a year. This happened when I was a coma for a year, and then came out of the coma, but was essentially brain dead.
Mm-hmm.
But in a care center until I was 12 years old.
Wow.
So it was those like fundamentals. And I think why I'm so, like, I started studying psychology when I was 11, because I think it ignited this curiosity in me around the human experience and the human condition,
Mm-hmm.
and why he made the choices that he did, and all of that. And even though, like, I mean, I don't remember having an active relationship with him,
Mm-hmm.
it was more the absence of him and the wondering about his decision making that like led to this profound curiosity.
Mm.
And then I remember, I had gone to visit him and I'd seen him. And then I remember the moment when I got the news that he had passed, and I was sitting on my bed and I was journaling, and my hair was like tied up in a ponytail. I was wearing this pink tracksuit, and my mom came in and she said, I just want you to know that your dad has passed. And I first felt this like enormous sense of relief, because I was like, oh, thank God, like that in between, like, for 9 years, he's like not fully conscious.
Right.
I was like ready for that to, for him to move on.
Mm.
And, but then I was also like angry that I felt like at that time he had so much to give, but got in his way.
Mm-hmm.
And like, why wasn't he there for us? And like, why wasn't he there for me? I had all of these sort of feelings come to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
But I wrote in my journal, don't die with your gift still inside.
Wow.
And that, like, I mean, that became really a rallying cry for me,
Mm-hmm.
and a sort of like reason, like, I'm not going to follow in my dad's footsteps. I'm going to express what I have to give.
Mm-hmm.
And so how that ties to San Francisco and the tech thing is that I realized I was in a way, like, I mean, it wasn't sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but I was like popping Adderall to get more done in this tech company. And that was like a part of the culture. And it was almost my own version of like a high performing perfectionist version of following in those footsteps in a way. And so that was like, whoa, how did I get here?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what had me make such a like, I need to start fresh.
Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful. And then because that's you, that exists in you. And then just the whole amount, all the people that have all these gifts inside of them that are kind of stuck in the rat race or wherever they're at, or like not dealing with things, to then, step out. And that's who you're helping. So, wow. Amazing work, Amber. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm. Cool. Well, thank you for offering to give away a copy of the book, sharing the story. I always say with these things, like, please enter to win the giveaway, but get the book. Like, as you've just told me more about it, it sounds absolutely phenomenal. And I think a lot of people that are kind of stuck and want to let go and go for their dreams should check this out. Where can people kind of find more about you, or like, what's next for you? Like, I'm excited. You've got so much. Oh, you've got the wedding. You've got
a wedding. Very excited about the wedding. We're getting married in Morocco in May. So.
Oh, wow. That's so soon. That's going to be amazing.
2 months away. So my dress comes tomorrow.
Great.
I'm so excited. So that's a fun, and it's a fun focus because I've been so career oriented for the last 10 years that it was like nice to like focus on our love and focus on our relationship. And we're taking dance classes, and like just to put energy there has been really special. But in terms of the book, you can find it anywhere books are sold. Amazon, choosewonder.com is the website for the book. And then on Instagram, it's my favorite because it's highly visual. I make art that I post almost every day. So I'm Hey Amber Rae, RAE. and you'll find all kinds of magic there. And I'm working on another book and working on several things I can't talk about quite yet.
Ooh, okay. Okay, well, stay tuned.
So, but if you do head to Instagram, like, comment and tell me what resonated most, because I always love to know, who's coming and joining the community.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you. You're such a beautiful example of what life can be like when you kind of do the work. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Excellent.